A good Vach, Shavua Tov, a good week to you, my holy sisters and brothers. Also, Moadim L'Simcha. Here we are in the middle of Sukkot. It's Saturday night, and we're starting the new week off with some beautiful learning. Let's light up the darkness. Who is with us as we gather to do some learning on a Saturday night? Sharon in New Jersey, Linda in Michigan, John in Maine, Sandy in Michigan, Ryan in Florida, Paul in the Great Northwest, Charles in Omaha. It's great when you, if you're watching and you put where you're tuning in from, or really any comment right at the beginning of the show, because that signals to the Facebook algorithm to show it to more people. It's very effective to make comments right at the top of the show. So thanks everybody who's doing that. Charles in Omaha, Melissa in Great Neck, New York, Rose in New Mexico, Christo in Lubbock, Michaela in Trinidad, Southern Colorado, Dorothy in Pennsylvania, and PK in Colorado, Dale in Mary, Michigan. Welcome, everybody. Gigi over there on the YouTube side in British Columbia. That was Eitan Katz doing his song Kumi Roni. Okay. Very quick story that I shared with our minyan today of the Kedushas Levi Yitzhak of Berdichev. He was the rabbi in Berdichev, right, which in the old world had tens of thousands of Jews living in it before, everything changed in the old world. But I've been to his grave in Berdichev, as I mentioned before, in Ukraine. And there was a time once, one day, right, during the year, very busy market day in Berdichev. Tens of thousands of Jews living in that town, and the Rebbe of the town, the chief rabbi of the town, was Levi Yitzhak of Berdichev, and he says to his secretary, I need to make an announcement right now. Gather all the townspeople in the town square. His secretary is like, Rebbe, it's a market day. It's a very important market day. People are going to be really unhappy if they have to leave, close their businesses and gather in the town square. They're going to all be here, in a couple days on Shabbos in the synagogue anyway. You can address them then. No, I need to make an announcement now. Could it at least wait till the end of business so they don't have to close their shops? No, it cannot wait. Okay. So the secretary, called the shamash in Hebrew, goes out there and spreads the word that the Rebbe has to make an important announcement, and he wants all the townspeople, all the Jews of Berdichev, to gather in the town square. As you can imagine, there was a lot of complaining and grumbling, but the people did it. They closed their stalls in the market. They stopped doing the deals that they were doing. They all gathered, thousands of people in the town square. Levi Yitzhak walked through the crowd, went to the middle of the town square. They built, like a little ersatz platform for him out of a few boxes. He got on top of that, and he said, I know you are all busy, but my announcement could not wait. It's a very busy time of year, but it couldn't wait. It's a very busy day, but it could not wait. It's a very busy hour, but it could not wait. Okay, so now there's a pregnant silence. Everyone wants to know what's so important that the Berdichev Rebbe needs to tell them right now. And he said, I, Levi Yitzhak, the son of Sarah of Berdichev, hereby announce and proclaim that there is a God in the world. And then he stepped off the little platform and walked back through the silent crowd and back home. Now, this was a crowd that would put all their work aside when their Rebbe asked them to gather in the town square for an important announcement. So, they have respect for the rabbi. It's got to be a God-fearing crowd in some sense. It's no news to them that there's a God in the world. Why did Levi Yitzhak feel the need to have them stop everything and hear his words? I'm not really going to answer the question. I think this is a question that all of us need to think about. I will just say what came to my mind is that, there's a Stephen Spender poem, or I'm sorry, it's a Wordsworth poem. The world is too much with us, late and soon. Buying and spending, we lay waste our powers. Something like that. I remember I was an English major in college. But that idea that we get so caught up in our businesses, our troubles, our issues, our this, our that, the other. And while we know that there's a God in the world, and we know we have obligations to God, and we know they have obligations to other people because God told us to do things, nonetheless, we start to live our lives as if there is no God in the world, and perhaps we need to be shaken awake sometimes, and we should ask ourselves, am I behaving as though there's a God in the world who sent me into this world to fulfill my soul's mission? Am I treating people around me the way God would have me treat them if I was mindful that there's a God in the world, etc.? I think answering the question of what that story means is a personal question for everybody, but it's one worth thinking about. I will also just say right now, thank you, God. We're late tonight because I got the call that my teenager just had literally a little bumper to bumper thing around the corner, and I had to go out and talk to the other driver in this. I wouldn't even call it an accident. The two bumpers touched, but my son and the other driver exchanged information. As a dad, I went over to make sure that everything is okay. That is like as kind and gentle a reminder of the fragility of life as you could possibly have. Nobody was hurt. The cars weren't even damaged. Not a big deal. Maybe it's going to cost us something to repair the bumper. Okay, whatever. Good reminder, that everything is, we're lucky when everything is going nice and smooth in life, and we should never take it for granted. But I apologize for being a little bit late starting the show tonight. Okay. Where are we holding? This is Tractate Beitzah, the 8th volume of the Talmud. These are the laws of festivals as they're distinguished from Shabbos and what they have in common with each other. We are in chapter 3 discussing the third Mishna, the second Mishna, and we'll open our discussion of the third Mishna here in chapter 3. This chapter, since we know that you are allowed on festivals what you're not allowed to do on Shabbos with particular regard to food preparation. So we know we can cook and we can light a fire so that we can cook, and we can slaughter an animal so that we can cook it and eat it on the festival. And we've been talking about, well, at what point in that, chain of events that leads to having the roast beef on my table, is it all considered food preparation? And as we saw yesterday, trapping an animal so that you could slaughter it on the festival and cook it and eat it, that's one step too far. They're not going to let you go. The sages do not allow us to go hunting and trapping animals. But where it gets to be a little bit of a sticky question is, let's say I have a farm with a large piece of property. It's fenced in, right? If I'm going to slaughter a calf that's in that fenced property, okay, I can walk up to the calf and I can catch it quite easily and then bring it, to the place of slaughter. But if a deer happened to be caught on my fenced-in property, if it was a large property, just because it's on the property doesn't mean I've caught the deer. It's not considered trapped just because it's within my fence, because that is an animal that's going to continue to run away from me, and catching it would be an act of trapping. Likewise, a house sparrow, like if you put that deer inside the house, okay, in the house, now it's considered trapped. But if a sparrow flies into my house, it's not considered trapped. A house sparrow is referred to in Hebrew as a dror sipora, a free bird. And we talked about free bird yesterday. Why? Because even if it's inside the house, he's not going to let me catch it. He's going to fly away from me. So catching the sparrow even inside the house would be an act of trapping that is prohibited on the festival. If it was already in a closet, then it would have been considered trapped from before the festival. And if then I could reach into the closet, pull it out, slaughter it properly, and eat it. It's a kosher bird. I don't know how too many people eat sparrows, but you could if you slaughtered it and cooked it properly. All right, so we continue on this question of what constitutes permitted catching versus prohibited trapping on the festival. Rabbah bar Rav Huna said that Rav said, if one dammed a water channel that was used to irrigate a field on the eve of a festival, meaning before the festival started, and the following day he arose and he found fish in it, they are permitted. These fish presumably arrived with the water before the festival and were unable to escape as the channel had been obstructed. Therefore, the fish are considered as having been prepared before the festival. The notes make clear, because you might ask, well, if I just put a dam in this irrigation stream, right, and now the water's going to pile up behind it, and now I can find fish there during the festival, so they would be considered prepared for the festival. Well, how do I know the fish arrived there after the festival began? How do I know that they arrived there before the festival began when I put the dam in place and not during the festival, which would be like, then they weren't prepared for use on the festival and we would not be able to use them. And so the notes make clear when he said he dammed the festival, he dammed the irrigation ditch, it means that he put two obstructions in the ditch. One at, let's say, one end of the field and another at the other end. So now the water in the ditch is sort of trapped from before the festival. Whatever fish are in that ditch were there before the festival started. And that's why he's able to reach into this narrow ditch where it will be easy to catch the fish. If it was a wide ditch, then it would be more like trapping, netting the fish, and that would be prohibited. But the point of damming this ditch is that he dammed it in two places, and then whatever fish were between the two obstructions were there before the festival started. Rav Chisda said, from this statement of our teacher Rav, we learn that an undomesticated animal that nested in an orchard near one's house does not require special designation, but is considered prepared. Just as the fish, I didn't purposely put the fish in that ditch, right? I put two obstructions in two spots in the ditch and the fish were caught there, but they arrived there on their own in the first place. Now that's being compared to an animal that nested in somebody's orchard, right? So it was already there in that orchard before the festival began. Is it prepared for me to now take that animal? It's an undomesticated animal, but it's there nesting in my orchard. Is it considered prepared for the festival? So if it's a kosher undomesticated animal, so now I could slaughter it, roast it, and eat it on the festival. Rav Chisda says, from this statement of our teacher Rav, we learn that yes, the case of that undomesticated animal nesting in the orchard is prepared for use on the festival. Rav Nachman said in response to this conclusion, our colleague Rav Chisda has fallen upon a great matter, i.e. an issue that is not at all straightforward, but is the subject of various disagreements. It's not so simple, and comparing it to the fish caught in this dammed irrigation ditch, blocked irrigation ditch, is not the same as an undomesticated animal that nests in one's orchard. Some say a slightly different version of this statement that Rabbah bar Rav Huna said. From this statement of our teacher Rav, we learn that an undomesticated animal that nested in the orchard does not require special designation. And with regard to this statement, Rav Nachman said that Rabbah, the son of our colleague Rav Huna, has fallen upon a great matter. It's the same learning, but the question is who, fell upon this great matter and made a statement that is going to require further analysis. Rav Nachman explains the difference between the cases of the fish caught in the blocked irrigation ditch and the undomesticated kosher animal nesting in somebody's orchard. There, in the case where the undomesticated animal nested in an orchard, the person performed no action at all, as the animal came of its own accord to nest in the orchard. Whereas here, in the case of the blocked ditch, the water channel, the person did perform an action when he blocked the water from leaving the channel. Rav Nachman concludes his challenge. And does the animal not require further designation, right? The fact that when you block the water channel, okay, so you made a sort of statement to yourself and the world. Why am I doing that? Because I want to eat those fish during the festival. I want them to be available to me to, pick them up out of the ditch and then, slaughter them and cook them and eat them. But this animal that came and nested in my orchard, did I designate it so that it would be considered prepared for use on the festival? It's in my orchard, but it came of its own accord. Do I have to say, I am thinking or I am planning to slaughter that animal that's nesting in my orchard tomorrow during the festival? So then it would be designated. But without any statement or action on the part of the owner of the orchard, is that animal actually designated for use on the festival? Right. So here in the case of the animal nesting in the orchard, there was no action at all. In the channel, there was an action. So Rav Nachman concludes his challenge. And does the animal not require further designation? Isn't it taught explicitly in a Beitzah, an undomesticated animal that nested in an orchard requires designation? And as for a free bird, that sparrow, one is required to tie its wings so that it will not be mistaken for its mother, i.e. so that he does not take a different bird. He has to, if he has access to those birds, they're caught in some way, he still has to designate which one he's planning to use the next day. So he ties its wings, he marks it in some way, so that it will not be mistaken for a different bird the next day. And this is a testimony that was reported in the name of Shemaiah and Avtalion, who were the pair of sages before Hillel and Shammai. And the Gemara comments, indeed, this is a conclusive refutation of the sages who drew an inference from Rav's statement that just in the same way that these fish that you blocked off their channel, now they're considered prepared for use on the festival, but you can't, by analogy, extend that ruling to the undomesticated animal that nested in your orchard, and this is a conclusive refutation to that idea. And the Gemara asks, does an undomesticated animal in an orchard really require designation? Now we're going to have another source of law on this matter. But isn't it taught in a Beitzah that Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar said, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel concede with regard to doves and the like, that one had designated on the eve of a festival when they were inside the nest, and on the festival itself he found them in front of the nest, that they are prohibited, as these doves might not be the same ones that he had designated before the festival, but rather the doves that he designated flew out of the dovecote and other doves flew in, and he can't be sure that these doves that are near the nest where he designated doves the day before are actually the doves that he designated. Where am I? And so therefore they are prohibited. And what case is this statement said? It is with regard to doves of a dovecote, doves of a loft, and birds nesting in pitchers or in a building. However, geese, chicken, domestic doves, and an undomesticated animal that nested in an orchard are permitted in all cases, and they do not require designation in advance. In the case of a free bird, one is required to tie its wings so that it is not mistaken for its mother. In the case of a sparrow. So now we have two Beitzahs that contradict each other, at least with respect to the question of the undomesticated animal that nested in my orchard. Is it considered prepared for use on the festival or not? According to one Beitzah it is, according to the other Beitzah it's not. And with regard to those birds whose wings were tied as a sign, and similarly those that were shaken in advance, waved, in order to designate them for the festival, if they were in cisterns, in houses, in trenches, or in caves, they are permitted on the festival. However, if they were in trees, they are prohibited, lest one climb up and detach something from it, which is prohibited. This is that Beitzah continuing. We've already hit the necessary point that's relevant to the discussion we're having now, but having brought in this Beitzah, the second Beitzah that mentions undomesticated animals nesting in the orchard, he's just, listing all of what that Beitzah says. And one thing that's interesting about this is that the sages prohibited designated an animal in a bird in a nest that's in a tree. They don't want you to say, okay, the bird in that tree, even though I could designate it today for use on the festival tomorrow, and it'll still be there tomorrow on the festival, the sages don't want me climbing a tree on a festival. Why? Because when I climb the tree, I might knock some leaves or branches of the tree, And then I would have violated the prohibition against harvesting, right? We cannot cut living limbs off of a plant on Shabbos or a festival because that's similar to harvesting, the prohibited labor of harvesting. You can't do that on Shabbos or festivals. And those birds whose wings were tied, like a bird that was marked by another person, and similarly those that were waved by another person, are prohibited in all places, even on a festival, due to the prohibition against stealing. The fact that another person designated a bird for use on a festival, or a goose or a chicken or a calf or a sheep or a goat. If another person designated for use on the festival, he designated for his own use on the festival. The fact that it was designated for use on a festival and that it is therefore prepared for the festival doesn't mean that a different person can come along and use that animal because of the concern that they might end up stealing somebody else's animal, even by mistake. So tying or shaking is considered an act of acquisition. So now when we're talking about the undomesticated animal that just came and nested in the orchard or even in a public place where it's not on my property, right? But there's a place where some birds are nesting on public property, and I can come there before the festival and mark one of them. And I'm planning to come back tomorrow during the festival and take that bird and slaughter it, roast it, and eat it. So then I come and I see not the bird I marked, but somebody else's bird that they marked. Okay, well, they must have taken my bird, so I'll take their bird, right? But you can't do that because the fact is when they marked their bird, they acquired that bird for their use on the festival, and you can't go and take somebody else's bird because it's considered stealing in this context. Rav Nachman said, now with respect to the original dispute, right, about these undomesticated animals that nested in the orchard, in my orchard, are they considered prepared for use on the festival or not? Rav Nachman said, this is not difficult. This baraisa, which teaches that an animal nesting in an orchard is permitted even without designation, is referring to a young animal that cannot escape. Whereas the other baraisa, which states that the designation is required, is referring to its mother, which is larger and can escape. And the Gemara asks, but is mere designation sufficient for its mother? Doesn't it require complete capture, as it is an undomesticated animal? Rather, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said that both this baraisa and that one are referring to it, a young animal that is unable to escape. And the difference between them is as follows. This baraisa, which does not require designation, is referring to a garden situated near the city, so that one knows exactly where the animal is located and can take it at any time. And the other baraisa, which requires designation, is referring to a garden that is not located nearby, right? And so there's this apparent contradiction. Is it that there was an argument between the sages of one baraisa and the sages of the other baraisa? No, they were actually talking about different cases. So one solution was, well, it's talking about the young animal, which can escape, so it's considered trapped even in my orchard, which is not necessarily fenced in, as opposed to the mother, which could easily fly away or run away, and therefore it is not designated because it's not prepared, because it's not trapped, it's not even captured yet. Or is it that, my orchard is nearby and I know exactly where the animal is, or the orchard is far away and it's a big orchard and I'm not even sure exactly where that animal is. I will have trouble finding it. And that's how they distinguish the cases. That concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 2. Now we open Mishnah number 3. If an animal is in danger of dying, in which case its meat would be prohibited, as the animal had not been properly slaughtered, and one wishes to slaughter it in the hope that it will be found fit for eating, and he will be spared a loss. He may not slaughter it on a festival unless there is still time in the day for him to eat the minimum measure, an olive bulk of roasted meat from the animal, so that it is possible to say that he slaughtered the animal for the sake of the festival. Rabbi Kiva says there need not be enough time for him to roast it. Rather, it is sufficient, even if there's only time, to eat a minimum measure, an olive bulk of raw meat from the place where the animal is slaughtered, i.e. from its neck, without going to the trouble of removing its hide and roasting it. So to just be sure we're clear about what's going on here, So, think on rural life on a farm. A person has various animals on his farm, and, he's enjoying the festival, etc. Now there's an animal which is in danger of dying, okay? Now, it has to be a particular kind of threat to that animal's life, because if it's sick or injured in a way that it would die for sure within 12 months. So that animal is a treifa, and even if you slaughter it properly, we're not allowed to eat it. It's not a kosher animal anymore because of that injury. But perhaps, I don't know, there's a predator right nearby that's going to kill the animal. I'm not sure exactly what the case is, but some kind of a danger to the animal where it might die very soon, even today, in which case, if it dies by itself, or it's killed by a predator or something like that, then, or it drowns, like let's say that animal is like caught in a well or something. I don't know. I don't even know what the case is. But if it dies not by a proper kosher slaughter, then it is unfit for eating by a Jew. Jews can only eat meat from an animal that was slaughtered in the kosher manner. So this person whose animal is in danger, if it's going to die this other kind of death, a natural death or a predator death or something like that, then it's a complete loss for the owner because he can't eat it. It's not going to be fit for eating. But if he slaughters it now, then it's a properly slaughtered animal. And as long as it's not deemed a treifa, then he's going to be able to butcher it, roast it, eat it, maybe just butcher it, roast some of the meat for his needs on the festival and sell the rest of the meat to his neighbors, to a butcher, etc. He can make some money on that animal. It shouldn't be a loss to him. For a poor farmer, that's a really big deal. He doesn't want to undergo that loss. What the sages are saying here is you're only allowed to slaughter an animal on a festival for your needs of the festival, so you can celebrate on the festival. Saving the animal, so that you don't have a complete financial loss because the animal died rather than getting slaughtered, that's not a reason that is valid for breaking the prohibition of slaughtering an animal on a festival. You can only slaughter an animal on a festival for food preparation. So they're saying, okay, you're going to save it so you don't have a complete loss, but you have to do it with enough time left in the day so that you can, butcher that animal and roast some of its meat and eat it that day, right? If the sun is sinking and the festival is about to end, too late. You're not going to be able to not only slaughter that animal, but get some of its meat roasted and eat it during the festival. Rabbi Akiva is more lenient, and he says, well, he has to eat some of that meat, but he doesn't have to go to the trouble of butchering and roasting the whole animal. If at the place where he slaughters the animal, the neck, he can cut out at that minimum measure of meat, an olive bulk, and just eat that raw meat, okay, then, you can say it was for food preparation on the festival and he won't undergo that loss. If one slaughtered an animal on a festival in the field, he may not bring it to his house on a pole or on a set of poles carried by two people, as this appears too similar to a weekday activity. Rather, he must alter his usual weekday manner of performing this action of bringing the animal back to the house from the field, and he must bring it by hand. If it's too big for him to carry the animal, he must cut the animal up and bring it limb by limb, carrying it by hand, but not transporting it the way, I guess, hunters bring it back from the field on poles, because that's a weekday activity. Gemara. Rami bar Abba said, the mitzvah, the commandment of flaying and cutting the animal into pieces, right, skinning the animal and butchering it into pieces, is mentioning in the Torah with regard to the burnt offering, right? And the Torah specifies that when you offer an elevation offering, an offering in the temple, only when the temple is standing on the altar, when it's going to go up in its entirety as an offering to God, that animal must be skinned. You take the hide off the animal and you cut it up into pieces. We talked about that was it in Tractate Sukkah or Pesachim? When we were talking about the offerings that go up on the altar, how they're cut up. And that, I'm sorry, in Yoma, the tractate about Yom Kippur, where we learned about the different functions of the priests. So that is to say, we learn from the laws of the burnt offering that a butcher should first remove the hide and cut the animal into pieces before he gets to roasting and eating. And from here, the Torah taught proper etiquette. that a person should not eat meat before skinning and cutting the animal into pieces. The Torah is teaching us that it is inappropriate to move too fast, right? An animal has given up its life so that you would have what to eat or to make an offering to God. You have to respect the carcass, right, which up until a moment ago was the vehicle in which that animal's soul walked around in this world. And so just as we respect the dignity of the human body, and we're very careful when a person dies to treat that body with tremendous respect, bury it in a proper burial, very quickly after it dies, etc., we treat the animal's carcass with respect as well. And one of those aspects of the etiquette, which is proper, how humans should conduct themselves with respect to animals, is that if you slaughter an animal, you should skin it and butcher it before you get around to cooking and eating it. We skip a little bit to the top of the B side of page 25. The sages teach proper manners unconnected to any prohibition, as it is taught in a Beitzah. Now that we're talking about manners, a person should not eat garlic or onions from the side of its head, meaning its roots, but rather from the side of its leaves. And if he did eat in that manner, he gives the appearance of being a glutton. Similarly, a person should not drink his cup of wine all at once. And if he did drink in this manner, he gives the appearance of being a greedy drinker. The sages taught in this regard, one who drinks his cup all at once is a greedy drinker. If he does so in 2 swallows, this is proper etiquette. In 3 swallows, he is of haughty spirit, as he presents himself as overly delicate and refined. Now, obviously, this depends on how big your wine glass is, but whatever the standard size wine glass that they were using, the proper way to drink it was in 2 swallows. 3 is too highfalutin. 1 is too much of a drinker, a greedy drinker. So they're saying, there's this balance of how you do things, and you should eat with good manners. You should drink with good manners. You should eat the proper parts of plants and not the inappropriate parts of plants, etc. Then they're starting to learn lessons from various kinds of food. We're skipping a little bit. And the lupine, called termis, is an extremely bitter legume that is edible only after an extensive process. And the sages say, the lupine will cut off the feet of the enemies of the Jewish people. Generally, when the Talmud says the enemies of the Jewish people, they mean the Jewish people and the way that we undermine ourselves when we behave badly. And what does it mean by this? How can this legume, this extremely bitter legume, cut off the feet of us, meaning it's going to make us look bad. It's going to embarrass us. This bitter legume is going to embarrass the Jewish people. What does this mean? As it is stated, Judges 10:6, and the children of Israel continued to do evil in the eyes of the Lord, and they served the Baalim and the Ashtaroth, idolatrous gods, and the gods of Aram, and the gods of Zidon, and the gods of Moab, and the gods of the children of Ammon, and the gods of the Philistines, and they forsook the Lord and did not serve him. Right? We turned away from the Lord and followed the gods, ran after the gods of others. Right? This terrible history of Jews engaging in idolatry and really angering God. I mean, this is the book of Judges, right? So that's the next book after Deuteronomy. It's the book, that's Joshua, and then Judges comes soon after. But, it's like we haven't been in the land long. Judges, that's before the book of Samuel, before we even have a king, David. First Saul, then David, and then Solomon, who builds the temple. So this is in that 400 years between when we entered the land and before we even had the temple. And already the Jews were running after idols and behaving badly and, getting the wrath of the Lord. By inference from that which is stated, and they forsook the Lord, do I not know that they did not serve him? Rather, for what purpose does the verse state the seemingly unnecessary words and did not serve him? Right? Didn't it already just say that the Jews went after the gods of all these other peoples? Why does it have to add the phrase and did not serve Hashem? Rabbi Elazar said, the Holy One, blessed be he, said, my children did not treat me even like this lupine, this bitter legume, which, because it is inedible as it is, it must be cooked in water 7 times in order to temper its bitter taste, and is eventually made so sweet that one eats it as a dessert after a meal. But the Jewish people, they worshiped all 7 types of idolatry that are listed in the verse, and even after I punished them for each and every one of them, they still refused to repent from their evil ways. Instead, they remained rebellious and did not serve me, right? The lupine, at least, if you boil it 7 times, it gives up on being bitter and becomes, accommodating and even sweet. But the Jewish people are so stiff-necked, right? That they and obviously it's not the same person, but yeah, it's just like members of the population kept running after the gods of others. And God chastised the Jewish people and sent us curses and problems and enemies that beat us down and plagues and all kinds of punishments. And some of the people learned, but sadly, too many of the people did not learn. And the Gemara considers another aspect of the Jewish people. Now that we're talking about the Jewish people, it is taught in a Beitzah in the name of Rabbi Meir. For what reason was the Torah given to the Jewish people? Why were the Jewish people chosen to receive the Torah? It is because they are impudent. Am I pronouncing it right? Impudent, right? And Torah study will weaken and humble them, right? So impudent, what's a good synonym? Arrogant, right? Is that a good synonym for impudent? Impudent. Not showing due respect for another person. Impertinent. That's a good word, right? So the Jewish people were impertinent. Why would you choose a people, right, to bless them with having the relationship with God that we have now that we've been given the Torah at Mount Sinai? Why choose a people that's going to keep rebelling against the Lord, keep chasing after the gods of others, even though the Lord blesses us with so many blessings? Why are the Jewish people so stiff-necked? Why are they so impertinent? Why was such an impertinent and stiff-necked people chosen to receive the blessing of the Torah? And here, I've taught this before, right? The way I put this is that we were chosen because we are stiff-necked, because we're a model to the rest of the people in the world that if even us, such stubborn, arrogant, difficult people, now go into a relationship with God and submit to the obligations of the Torah, right? And we transform ourselves into a more refined and kind and giving people, well, then obviously it's possible for anybody to transform themselves and become more refined. I made up that lesson myself, but here it is in the Talmud, basically the same idea. Why were they chosen? Because they are impertinent. And Torah study will weaken and humble them. Weaken them meaning weaken their impertinence, weaken their arrogance, weaken their stiff-neckedness. And a sage of the school of Rabbi Yishmael taught the following with regard to the verse, Deuteronomy 33:2. From his right hand went a fiery law for them. The Holy One, blessed be he, said, based on their nature and character, these people, the Jews, are fit to be given a fiery law, a hard and scorching faith. Some say a different version of this Beitzah. The ways and nature of these people, the Jews, are like fire, as were it not for the fact that the Torah was given to the Jewish people, whose study and observance restrains them, no nation or tongue could withstand them, right? So if the Jews actually, according to this teaching, if we dedicated ourselves to world conquest, then those stubborn qualities and, the intellectualism and the ability to figure out solutions to problems, etc., would make us very dangerous to the rest of the people. But we don't do that, right? The Jews don't do that. Contrary to what, the anti-Semites say, that the Jews have some kind of secret cabal that's secretly running the world, which is just a bunch of nonsense. Here, what the sages are saying is, the reason we don't engage in that kind of behavior is because we're told by God to tithe half of, 10% of our income, to take care of the needy, to take care of the priests, to take care of the Levites, that we must look out for the widow and the orphan, that we must always be studying so that we can refine our manners and be better, kinder people, etc. Right? And so, we were given this law because we need this law. And there it is. That's the teaching right there. And this is the same as what Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish said. There are three impudent ones, or three impertinent ones: the Jewish people among the nations, the dog among the animals, and the rooster among birds. And some say also the goat among small cattle, and some say also the caper bush among the trees. I'm sorry I didn't give you warning before that. I'm done tonight. So let me go to questions and comments. Let me see if there are any there that I can start with. Okay. Nina asks, can we extrapolate greedy drinker that we should drink any liquid slowly? I think so. Once you're talking about this idea of etiquette, they gave the example with wine. Wine is understood to be, it has the alcohol content that could be intoxicating, but it's also just something precious. It's something expensive. It's something that people work on. And that would apply, to any meal that you're given, I would think, or even just water, because water is precious. We take water for granted until you're really thirsty and you don't have water. So I think the lesson that we're learning here is whenever you're eating, there's like a balance to be struck. Don't eat so slowly that you're considered annoying and fastidious and slowing the meal down for other people. You're a little bit haughty with your overly delicate manners. Don't eat so fast that you're considered a glutton or a greedy drinker with respect to liquids. Find that balance in between. That would seem to be the way to go. Okay, may we all be safe. May we continue to enjoy the holiday of Sukkot that we are in right now. May everybody have Moadim L'Simcha, these intermediate days. And then it must be Monday night. We begin Shmini Atzeret, the 8th day of assembly, which we've learned about, right, in Tractate Sukkah. The 8th day of Sukkot is its own holiday, Shmini Atzeret. That begins Monday night. And then in Israel, Shmini Atzeret and Simchas Torah are the same day. Outside of Israel, Shmini Atzeret is the first day, Monday night and Tuesday. And then Tuesday night and Wednesday will be Simchas Torah, where we really let all the stops out and celebrate big time as we finish our yearly cycle of reading the Torah and begin the new cycle. So have a good Vach, a Shavua Tov, a good week, and Moadim L'Simcha.